Good morning, everyone. I see we have our next set of panelists available, and I will get us started. I'm Mitzi Montoya, Dean of the Anderson School at University of New Mexico, and I have the honor of interviewing our distinguished panel of presidents, chancellor, and vice presidents. So I want to thank our panelists and remind all of our attendees that the bios of our distinguished guests are on the website for the summit. So with that, I want to say we have just 30 minutes, and I'd like to get our leaders of our research institutions' thoughts and reactions to the report, the brief summary of which we just heard. And so I want to thank President Stokes, Chancellor Arvizu, and Vice President Romero for joining me today. And I'm going to kick off the question with President Stokes. And first, a special thank you to you for sponsoring this event, and we appreciate your time today. So I want to start with a question that came up in the presentation that I think is really important. And of course, universities play many roles in the state, including contributing to innovation capacity, but we also, I think, have a role to play in a key need identified in the study around the need for more talented workers. So I wanted to ask President Stokes, as we think about how universities can be attractors of talent to a region, what is UNM doing to help attract more talent to the state?
Well, thank you, Dean Montoya, and glad to be here in this panel and with this very distinguished group focused on something that is critically important for the state of New Mexico. You know, I think as a university, we are always trying to attract the best national and international talent to come and serve on our faculty. And so that's been, for us, that's an ongoing thing that universities that are striving to really serve their states are focused on, and we are certainly no different in that regard. That's really what a major research university is going to do. And I think part of what we do every day is set things up with the hope of attracting and retaining talent. We obviously live in a great place, we think, and that's been shared with a lot. But we do a lot of things in the community that are intended to make it a better place to live. We have certainly offered a lot of expanded access to arts and culture. So when I think about New Mexico and I think about UNM, I think about those opportunities that we can showcase to better attract people here and to get them to stay. I think anytime a university is striving for excellence and providing lots of opportunities, it's really about capturing that and making sure people are aware of it, and I think part of what we've done in the last 2, 3, 4 years is try to do a better job telling our story so that we are, in fact, as a university and everything that we do in that role, we are able to attract and retain talent. Now, one of the things that we are also trying to do is attract students. And we're both trying to get students here from New Mexico, but we're also trying to bring students from elsewhere with the hope that they get a great education here. And many of them, we hope that they will stay. And we are seeing growth in our graduate education, which is remarkable given the circumstances. We are actually also trying to enhance opportunities for undergraduates so that we can attract and retain students who want to be engaged in scholarship as an undergraduate. We launched this in the last year and a half, our research grand challenges, which are focused on sustainable water resources, successful aging, and substance abuse. And these are attractors for faculty to New Mexico. They're also attractors to students because we've given students the opportunity to be engaged in solving some of the biggest problems in New Mexico. And when you can get people invested like that, I think that they really they buy in. And perhaps our hope is that we are able to keep them in New Mexico when they're here. We do have some challenges. We do graduate a lot of what I think would be entry-level workers, but there might be some kind of disconnect because one of the things I heard in this study is that, people are saying they don't have the talented workforce. And yet we know that we lose students because they don't find the jobs here. They end up leaving the state because of salaries or because the specific kinds of work that they're trying to do, they can't do here. And so fixing that issue, I think, is something that'll be really important for us. We also need some startup CEOs, and our Rainforest Innovations has been supporting startups since 1995. Since then, they've put together 145 startups based on UNM technology. 53% of those are still in business. And of course, that has a big impact on the state. And I'm sure I'll have an opportunity to say a little more about Rainforest Innovations at a later point.
Thank you, President Stokes. Chancellor Arbizu, representing New Mexico State University, of course, I would love to hear how New Mexico State is working to attract more talent to the state as well.
Great, thank you, Dean Montoya. And let me just say, first of all, thank you, President Stokes, for convening this summit. Extremely valuable, I think, for the state. And I was particularly moved by Ted's summary and context setter. Excellent presentation, Ted. Thank you for those thoughts and specifically the 17 or so potential recommendations that we all should look at. Many of those are things that we've thought of, obviously, and things that I think we can do a lot of work toward. And I am particularly struck by the notion of the one word that I think we hear over and over, and that's collaboration. And so I know President Stokes and President Wells and certainly Vice President Romero are all in tune on that particular note. Let me just say a couple of things. First of all, excellent comments from President Stokes, and many of those are similar to how we view this. Let me start with recognizing what I would want to call the importance of kind of the new normal, if you will, if there is such a thing, at the post-COVID world. The post-COVID world is different from the pre-COVID. Now, in the pre-COVID world, we heard all of the things that I think Ted was talking about. When we try to attract businesses, they ask two questions. First question is, where am I going to get my skilled workforce? And the second question is, where are my employees going to send their children to go to school? In both cases, those are part of that infrastructure, part of that education ecosystem that we all need to be paying attention to. And as I think many of us agree, higher ed has a role to play in both of those, both establishing what the workforce of the future needs to look like, but also participating and helping K through 12, public education has to get better in this state, and we need to be part of that solution, and not just waiting for them to provide the students that we need. So all of that said, that's pre-COVID world. Post-COVID world, similar but very different in a lot of respects. One is this notion of the idea that we now have, a much better feeling for what it looks like to telework. We can actually work from home. I mean, we didn't think that was possible. Now we know we can. As it relates to how do you attract talent, several things, in addition to getting the best world-class faculty that we can get so that we can, continue to be competitive and attract students, which are all important parts of this. If you look at the needs of New Mexico, and NMSU is the land-grant university of the state. So essentially, we have the responsibility for essentially looking across the entire population, the entire demographic. That really relates to all of the issues that are related to public ed and in economic development. And frankly, social mobility is one of the key elements that we think we have to focus on. Now, we have a system of university and branch colleges, as does UNM. And I think in a lot of different ways, we need to think about this at the system level. How do we meet the needs of those rural communities? Because despite the fact that I think at our four-year institutions, we're kind of holding our own a little bit in terms of enrollments and retention. We're getting better, graduate programs are increasing. We were only down 0.5% in terms of enrollment at the four-year college. But at our branch colleges, man, it is really, really tough. What you're seeing there is the disproportionate impact of COVID. And so social mobility is extremely important. And as we think about what can we do to both attract talent and also it's not sufficient to just train people and to reskill them. They have to have jobs. It's incomplete to have the skilling going on without knowing where they're going to work. And many of our citizens in New Mexico want to stay in New Mexico, and we want them to be able to keep them in New Mexico. So the idea of small business, and incubators, and we have an Arrowhead program that is really serves our communities in entrepreneurial programs of all kinds. We're looking at how do we get large businesses to now, in this new environment, set up satellites. Maybe their headquarters is in some other state, but set up a satellite where they can work here. First of all, taking advantage of the diversity of our state. That's appealing to many of them. And to have highly skilled workers working, in a telework kind of mode with larger companies that maybe have distributed, locations across the nation. Another way in which, again, we start to create jobs in our community. And then, of course, taking advantage of all of the relationships we have with the national labs, with certainly the military bases, there's just a tremendous amount of, I think, research potential in this state. The federal government spends a lot of money in New Mexico. I spent 25 years at Sandia. I'm aware of that, and we'll have a panel that I think our colleagues from Sandia, Los Alamos, and the weapons labs and the Army Research Lab will all speak. But the part that I think is important to us, first of all, they need skilled workers too, and they're hiring they have tremendous opportunity there, and we cannot fill all of those positions. In fact, it would be great if we could. We can't. They're national labs. They think nationally. We expect that, but we can do better. We can do better at what we provide in terms of talent for them. And so those partnerships between them and entrepreneurship programs. Programs that we have with them for essentially incubation and programs that relate to how do you have a business internship so students can actually get that experience prior to going to work into the marketplace. Those are important, not just with the national labs and the research institutions, but with our other businesses. In Las Cruces, we have a company here that's growing rapidly, electronic caregivers. And in fact, most of their students are alums of our institution. And there is opportunity for us to do internships and partnerships with them so that we get those experiences early on, and that helps attract. And I'll end with a couple of additional things. One, I'm attentive to the notion of, the country post-COVID is going to have to recover. We're going to recover in so many different ways, and it's going to take time. I am encouraged by what I think the new priorities of the new administration will be. I mean, they focus on climate. They focus on what I'm going to call what they call apparently Build Back Better, essentially with a just transition. They focus on equity, making sure that the middle part of the country, in particular, those who are disadvantaged communities, don't get left behind. And then national security, which again are all things that New Mexico is particularly well suited to, I think, engage in. So I think the idea of a partnership at the state level that helps us be competitive for, in fact, what I believe there will be, investments at the federal level will help us build our capacity, build our infrastructure, and move us in a direction. So everything from our critical infrastructures like energy, water, food nexus, which we all care about, important for the national and global community, as well as for our regional community. Those are important areas that we will emphasize as a consequence of trying to be prepared for what I think the new normal and the recovery of the nation might be. And then, building new supply chains, especially in manufacturing, reshoring some of those supply chains that have been ultimately, put offshore. I think these are things that I think are part of the new normal that I think we can take full advantage of. I'll stop there and just say, thank you for the opportunity to make that conversation.
Thank you, Chancellor. I'd like to turn to Vice President Romero from New Mexico Tech and ask the related question on attracting talent, but also, given your role as Vice President of Research, you might want to go ahead and tackle the question of what signature selective areas of investment is New Mexico Tech making in innovation to help grow our innovation capacity in the state as well.
Well, thank you very much. And President Wells sends his regrets. He had a previous commitment that he couldn't get out of, but I know this is a subject near and dear to his heart, and he wishes he could be here. Thank you to President Garnett and UNM for putting this on. I think it's I look forward to the rest of the day to learn more. Relative to your first question, pre-COVID, New Mexico Tech labeled itself as a STEM to the E squared university. We spell STEM with 2 E's, and one of those is entrepreneurship. And that's one of our avenues to try and attract faculty, students, to give them an environment that encourages entrepreneurship. And that can mean a very wide range of things. The traditional entrepreneurship of trying to spin out businesses and developing intellectual property and all those other things, but also an entrepreneurship from an academic standpoint is to grow programs and reach out into new areas. You know, we're one of the things right now that I know all of the research universities are highly motivated to go after is artificial intelligence. We'll be able to attract some really good talent as we develop our artificial intelligence capabilities. And so that's another part of that entrepreneurship. Another thing that we think is very important is involving students in research, both at the graduate and undergraduate level. That is really on-the-job training and allows them to hit the ground running when they go out for that first job. And hopefully it's in New Mexico, but quite often, as you've heard from both Chancellor Arvizo and President Stokes, those students are finding jobs outside of New Mexico because there isn't the jobs in New Mexico. So we need to work to develop those jobs as well. So post-COVID, you know, we really think that STEM education is a contact sport. How are we going to continue to do that? We're trying to learn how to do that. We don't have the answer yet. We need to work on that as to how we can get students in labs, get them experience in laboratory environment and laboratory settings so that they can learn. And that's a challenge. And we have to work on it and figure out how to do it. We hope to engage our friends at the national labs in order to help us do that. But it's we're going to have to do some learning. So with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. President Stokes, I want to come back to you with a follow-on to those comments and really thinking about the strategic selective areas of expertise that UNM is investing in, really to strengthen and diversify the region. Can you share a little bit about the strategy at UNM? You're on mute, President Stokes.
You'd think after all this time that would never happen to me again. So thank you. You know, we have a lot of areas of expertise at UNM, some of them reflected in our grand challenges, but really far beyond what we have done for grand challenges. I mean, the quantum information science and technology is a key area for us. We've got centers that are actively involved in that. Synthetic biology, directed energy, I already mentioned the artificial intelligence and then advanced manufacturing. We have also work and programs in ecology and climatology and material science, social and behavioral dynamics and addiction, which is, you know, of course, a national problem, and regional resources, economics. So those are some key areas of strength for us in research and education. I think that we have had in different parts of the institution some really innovative programs. Our Clinical and Translational Science Center has been funding research programs at $25,000 each, trying to encourage faculty and bioscience related companies to partner on building prototypes. And this is really part of the small business innovation research and then the technology transfer programs from NSF. Also, with our Health Sciences Center, we have, it's called Ascend. It's a program that's part of our health sciences. It's an accelerator program that focuses on training faculty in partnership with companies to work together. And UNM leads the program for 7 states and 13 other public universities in the Mountain West. Our Health Sciences and School of Engineering have a biodesign course that teaches students how to create new inventions and related to healthcare. Student teams get together, they create inventions, and then they have the opportunity to win $50,000, which is always, you know, an attractor. We sponsor an annual hackathon, which brings together companies and scientists and builds ideas with the hope that it will generate some new business in New Mexico. Of course, our research centers have generated a lot of work that has been commercialized, and our Rainforest Innovations has been, that group has really spearheaded the effort at UNM to help commercialize a lot of the work that goes on. Since I think one of the innovative things that happened at University of New Mexico was a partnership with the foundation to come together to actually co-invest in local investment firms to create startup companies. And I think since 2014, which is all it's when it first started, they have put more than 1.6 million in equity investments. I think they range from 85 to about 100,000 each. But those kinds of partnerships within to create those opportunities, I think is something I think was unique. So with that, I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to stop because we've got other people to talk to.
Thank you, President Stokes. Chancellor, I'd like to pick up on my last question, but also lead you into the next one, which is, as you think about New Mexico State's contributions to building innovation capacity, I'd also be interested in what partnerships you see as important enablers of that.
Thank you, Dean Montoya. And again, like President Stokes, I've got a plethora of things to talk about, and only a limited amount of time. Let me try to focus on a couple of key things I think are important. First of all, I think I think from Ted's talk, you bring back I think a couple of key elements. One is focus on your assets and make sure you've got again, we have multiple assets in New Mexico, which is we're blessed in that regard. Taking full advantage of that is more challenging sometimes. However, in the case of NMSU with the ag school, we have those kind of capabilities. We focus a lot on energy and water because obviously those things relate to agriculture. And in fact, A&M is agriculture and mechanical arts, which today's terms is engineering. So those are the kinds of things that we focus on. Partnerships that have arisen from those heritage kinds of competencies and capabilities are things like the new partnership we developed with the Department of Environmental, the Department of the Environment, and in New Mexico with Secretary Kenny. And this is the Produced Water Research Consortium, which again, it was focused on how do you improve the opportunity for you to use produced water coming out of the oil and gas industry through some of the processes that they use for reuse, other than for oil and gas. Huge area of importance in New Mexico is because we know that as the climate changes, droughts will be more frequent. We have water scarcity already, and that is going to be a recurring issue for us going forward. Associated with that is is a program that we're a part of that we won at the national level with a big long team of other partners. It's called the National Alliance for Water Innovation. Essentially, we are the lead for that among the partners on desalinization, internal to the part of the U.S. that's not on the coast. A lot of activity in those kinds of things that relate to the energy, food, water nexus, which again is a big piece of our competency capability in many times in partnership with UNM and New Mexico Tech, certainly on the cyber stuff, certainly the things that we're doing with EPSCoR and the grid modernization. Those kinds of things are collaborations already going on, and we'll do more and more of those as time goes on. The other areas of competencies, which we're very pleased about, again is commercialization of space. Obviously, we have a spaceport. Virgin Galactic is a big partner and someone that is going to be a big piece of what we do next. Creative media, another area where New Mexico can attract the areas of essentially programs and designs of again new both documentary and movie kind of things that I think the state is well positioned to take advantage of. And I agree with Vice President Romero about STEM education, and I with all of STEM and all of the other things that go along with that, STEAM and STEAM HA, all the various acronyms that go along with that, because these are all important parts of the future. I'll end with one last thing, and that is Ted mentioned access to capital, hugely important. And how do you get access to that? What we've already done is in, again, partnership with the state, was be able to, we put together an Arrowhead Innovation Fund, $2 million, very modest in terms of its commitment. We've spent about 3/4 of that money, but 14 portfolio companies, a number they've been able to attract, many times, almost $8 million of outside money for the $2 million that's there. And the next big thing is to take that fund and go from 2 million to 20 million, so that we can have something that's uniquely for New Mexico that can take us to the next level. So all of those things, I think, are consistent with where we want to go, and much of what I think we're talking about here collectively. So I'll stop there as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Vice President Romero, I'd ask if I want you to have an opportunity to share from New Mexico Tech's perspective in response to the last question, and thinking about investments in signature, really research areas, which you mentioned, and you led us into that path. But also I'd ask for your thoughts on partnerships and really incentives that might help us align our critical assets. So our universities, our policy initiatives, our research, and the other labs and assets in the state. Are there things that you could share from your perspective that you see New Mexico Tech helping do to advance the New Mexico economy?
So first, to focus on where we're investing our efforts. I mentioned artificial intelligence. Additive manufacturing, as has also been mentioned, is a very big topic on our campus. And myself personally, I think that additive manufacturing is a really huge opportunity for New Mexico, because it's easy to spin out small businesses in advanced manufacturing. And they don't have to be located in the Rio Grande corridor. They could be located throughout the state. And so this is an opportunity for not just the central part of New Mexico, but for all over New Mexico to take advantage. Chancellor Arvizo mentioned space. Of course, space is a very important aspect of the history of New Mexico, going all the way back to the Acoma and their appreciation of the beautiful skies that we have here. But in today's world, space is becoming more and more important. So I think, you kind of see the theme between all the research universities of where we're going. Partnerships. I think we need to start in our own backyard. Obviously, we have huge resources in the national labs, and we have to make sure we take advantage of those. I've been a research vice president for a number of years, and I've seen it kind of ebb and flow in our partnerships with the national labs, kind of depending on what's happening on the national level from a security standpoint. I think we're in a mode right now where it's getting easier. Some of the roadblocks are coming down for us to collaborate with the national labs. We have a number of joint appointments right now with Los Alamos, and those seem to be expanding. And so that ease of going back and forth, collaborating internally with the other research universities. EBSCOR program is doing a great job of that, I think, and we can do more work in that area. So once we start collaborating and it's playing nicely in the sandbox with our neighbors here in New Mexico, certainly we should be reaching out. But I think the most important thing is to get those internal collaborations going, because collectively we provide a huge, strong collaborative group if we bring our resources together. Individually, we're pretty good, but collectively, we're great. And so I think we need to get all of that in New Mexico together. And you had one more, and now I've spaced on it. What was your third?
That's quite all right. We're close to the end of our time, so I want to thank you for that, and thank all of you. And I do want to turn to President Stokes for last wrap-up thoughts on the comment that Vice President Romero just made regarding partnerships and opportunities you see for alignment to advance the New Mexico economy.
Well, I do. I'm absolutely in agreement. I actually, both internally at the University of New Mexico and in the state of New Mexico, I think what is one of the most critical things that we can do is break down those barriers to collaboration. Because I am a firm believer that we are stronger together. We do individually have tremendous impact, but can you think of what would happen if we actually collaborated on some of the strengths that we have and did it with the thought of having even greater impact? And so big believer in partnerships. We've been improving ours. We've seen some of the same success that I heard mentioned, you know, more partnerships with the national labs. Of course, Anderson School is doing a lot of work with, you know, with private partners like West. And I think collaborations like that are going to be critical as well. So, and one thing I did want to mention too, there was a lot of comment in the chat and conversations about issues associated with education in New Mexico. And I really think that partnerships of universities, community colleges, and the school system could in fact make a big difference. And we've started the initial conversations here with Albuquerque Public Schools and our community college, CNM and UNM. I think, you know, those kinds of partnerships are going to make a difference for things that could have a real impact on New Mexico's economic development.
Thank you. And I want to thank all of you for your participation. There are lots of comments in the chat, and there will be an opportunity for us to follow up and make sure that we continue working on these things. But I thank you for sharing your insights. I know each of you and your institutions are doing amazing things, and we look forward to continuing this conversation and partnership. So thanks to our distinguished panel.